Sure, Jeff.
No, it could be. Huh? Should be coming back now.
I know Jeff put a job set priority myself.
Huh? Is that what it is? Were you trying to get
Apparently, all the friends around are running
Okay, just checking.
priority.
I recognize it. I don't know if anyone else did.
That could also be a factor in what you're seeing.
And the other
Is it current one?
annoying thing, and I think
No, you probably have to start.
404 did this as well, if I'm trying to scroll,
Yeah, play button.
and I accidentally grab this time of the scroll to the time, Netscape's got to go back to the
Okay,
server,
that's slow mode.
get the page, and re-render it.
You know what? It's actually going to the cache, but the O2 file system is so slow, it looks like it's going to the web. That's actually the real answer.
Actually, I have my cache set to 0.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I mean,
Oh,
I'm using that also.
see, that's so.
No, that's not.
So that's my problem.
Yeah, don't set your file cache to 0. Unless you're using that
I got
smart
a
cache.
skip years ago that said to make Netscape faster, set the cache to 0.
It depends on how fast your internet connection is. That's tough. A lot of people like to fiddle with the cache. I don't touch the disk cache and memory cache because I figure that they put in there for a reason. But I know there are tools that are available that will do the caching for you. But in that particular case, at least give your cache some value, and then it won't actually go to the thing. Also, like printing, it'll go back to the web to grab it. So you want to at least give yourself a little bit of disk cache so that it won't grab it again. But the answer is the page is getting wider. It's got to be relayed out.
Yeah, it has to relay it out to the width of the new document. But the thing is, for setting the cache, setting it low is also a good idea, because once it fills up, it has to go through and clean it out, and cleaning it out takes some time too.
Right.
So it's good not to make it big, but don't make it 0 either, because otherwise we'll have to go back to the net to fetch everything.
Okay. That doesn't happen with Windows. Recite. That doesn't happen with Windows.
It happens on Windows, it's quicker.
It's much faster, because especially if you have a disk cache set to something that it can still get the things off your machine, yeah, go down to the net to grab
The
it.
Windows file system is so fast you won't even know that it's getting it out of the cache.
The difference in that is there's also a selection that says that you want to go get it every time it goes out there.
That's true as well.
Yeah, there are actually 3 settings for that. That it either has to go out and look and get the new document every time, or that it will check every session, or that it won't ever check it all. Once you have a document, it will always keep it.
Most people should have that set for, you can change it to never if you want to fiddle with that, but once per session should be.
Once per session is the default.
But setting that to 0, you're gonna hit the network a lot more than you need to.
Yeah, we're on
Couple
that
things.
sort of
First off, an
fast
observation
version.
about the Java version situation, because I dealt with this just a couple of days ago. My brother said to me, look, I got this thing, it's supposed to have this Java applet, and I just got a blank page. And immediately, I realized that he wasn't at 1.18 at his Java level. I updated it and worked fine, but he never got a message that his Java version was out of date.
What version was you running?
The original that shipped with Warp4, was that 1.12?
102.
The unsupported Java version, we're only checking for the recent versions that were no longer supported.
Because there's no way to identify 102 easily. Right. And you think that's bad? I'm out here with the Lotus guy. He's running 101. I don't even know how it got on his system. Merlin was Java 101.
Here's my real question for you guys. I don't know which one of you is going to have to deal with this one, but
Deal. That's a bad connotation.
could one or the other of you definitively explain how the Win16 plug-in system works in 4.6.1?
What do you want to know?
Well, I'll tell you this.
It is seamless Windows. What they did was they took all the same architecture that they do for seamless Windows and they implemented it in plugins. So do you want to know how it works from a technical point of view or from what's going on in your plugins directory? Let me give you
Really from the plugins directly.
All right. Okay. All right. Let me see if I think I have the 116 stuff on here. Yeah, the technical point of view, you know that well. Okay. The short answer is, come on, little mouse. Let's see. Do that then. Sing or something. Still a count. You want to knock those people out of here, don't you? There you go. I don't use this machine though. All right. Okay. So let's. I'm really hoping that I have the Win16 plugins installed, but even if I don't, I can tell you what happened. I'm just hoping I can actually show you.
The only Win16 plugin, that I'm able to get working, is real audio, but not as a plugin, as a help.
That's right.
I can't get Macromedia Shockwave to work.
I've got Flash work, but let me explain to you the basics. Okay, first thing that's important to note is that there's this new directory called Win16, and inside Win16 is plugins. So the first thing I want to make clear is that when you install a Win16 plugin, it doesn't go in the plugins directory, it goes in the Win16 plugins directory. That's in the README, that means that nobody saw that. But it is in the README. Now, here's the trick. Here's the trick on Flash. Okay, now, the way that a plugin typically figures out where it needs to be installed, and by the way, there are like 2,000 different ways, but I know how Flash does, is they look for a Netscape.ini. Now, most ones that are smart look in the Netscape.ini, but Flash is not one of those, so it looks for the Netscape.ini. Because if it had looked in the Netscape.ini, we fake one right here, it would have seen that it's the install directory SQL in Netscape. But that's not what it does. Shockwave looks for the Netscape.ini and says, oh, that's where Netscape is installed. So the way you would install Shockwave Flash is first you have to start a WinOS 2 full screen. It's very important. You start to install Shockwave, and you'll notice that it thinks that it wants to install itself an OS2, MDOS, WinOS 2 plugins. So the first thing you do is change it to point to NS461, program Win16 plugin, okay, and that's where it's going to install itself. Now, the way that the Win16 plugins work is there's this, you see this DLL called npproxy.dll, and it's got a size, I think it's about 22K with 20K, I don't know what the size is. But what you'll find that's interesting is that if you've got the Win16 plugins working and then you look at your OS2 plugins directory, what you find is that there's a plugin that's named, that corresponds to your Win16 plugin that's the same size as the npproxy plugin. That should tell you something. What the npproxy plugin does is all it does is it looks, all the Win16 plugin support looks through the Win16 plugins directory, and for every plugin that it finds, it literally DOS copies npproxy.dll to have the same name as the Win16 plugin, and it puts it in the regular plugins directory. So the first thing to check to make sure that you have Win16 plugins working is you want to make sure your plugin is a Win16 plugin, and you should look at your Netscape plugins directory and see that you have an npproxy DLL and then another file that's the same, that should be named the same as a Win16 plugin and is the same size as the npproxy plugin. Okay? So then what happens when it loads that guy is it goes into the Windows directory, the Win16 plugins directory, and that's how it actually loads the plugin itself. Now, you must be at Fixpack 5 in order for this to work, to even try it. We used to replace the system modules, but we don't anymore. So I know it says in the README how to stop the Fixpack checking, but that's not intended to allow you to install with no Fixpack, even though I'm sure there are people that are inclined to do that. So please make sure that if you're going to use that, if you're going to use Netscape 461, do use Fixpack 5. I really appreciate it. But that's basically how it works. So the key is to make sure that you install Shockwave Flash and Win16 plugins. Now, once you've done that, to check to see if the plugin's enabled, you do About Plugins, and then you should see Shockwave Flash listed as a plugin there. Now, pages that will not work. I don't know why, but like the Comedy Central South Park site doesn't work. It starts, you see the Shockwave Flash started, but then it crashes, so that's a problem. Now, but I definitely use Flash and I know that it works. The other thing that I'll tell you about the Flash situation is, in the release notes, we document a way to emulate Windows. We have this os2.emulate.windows flag that you use. If you're going to use Flash, I recommend turning that on, because when you start surfing around the Macromedia sites, you'll find that they'll kick you out of a lot of stuff if they don't think you're Windows. As a matter of fact, the page to retrieve plugins for Shockwave doesn't work at all unless you have that turned on. So I recommend turning that on. os2.emulate.windows. If you select Help Release Notes and then click on the Release Notes link, it'll show you a list of all those. And I do want you to go to the Release Notes. We actually all these undocumented features that you guys heard about on the web and stuff, we actually document them this time around. So if you go to your Release Notes, so they're not really undocumented features anymore. It doesn't make them exciting. We've got some neat stuff in there. You'll find some. I find URL deletion annoying, so usually I turn it off. There's the ability to emulate Windows. There's a couple of features there that everybody's been asking for, like the ability to force binary downloads for unknown types. Let's see. I couldn't even begin to name them. So if you want to use like Arabic and Hebrew, there's some slides that you can turn on, and so they're all there. So I recommend going to the release notes for more information. But that's the short answer. And then once it comes up, it's exactly like seamless Windows, which is, if you want to just tell that real quick so people know.
If anyone's interested. The way the seamless architecture works is that it allows the Windows 2 to paint in an area of a window on Presentation Manager. And normally that's a main window on your desktop. And what they've done for the plugins is allows that to be embedded inside of a PM window, inside of another application. So it is a whole other layer to be able to do that, and it merges seamlessly with another PMS.
You'll see the mouse cursor change to a Windows mouse pointer as you move it.
Do I need to do anything special to my Windows 2, my basic Windows 2 settings?
No, you do not.
Because I don't use seamless Windows, because I don't find it extremely stable.
And that should work.
Okay.
Shouldn't be anything you need to do.
All right, then the last question I have for you is about Real Player. I know you guys don't work for Real Networks, but more and more we're seeing sites that are not compatible with Real Player 5 for Windows 3.1. Is there anything like on the horizon for the Netscape team?
We don't have any relationships with Real. My understanding is that they're pushing to have their stuff done as a W3C standard, and obviously if that happened, there would be people that would make an effort to put Real on OS2. The relationship that Real has with IBM is the best relationship. It has been in the past. It's getting better. But the situation is that they actually aren't interested in a lot of platforms. They're targeting. I mean, they've got a really bad situation in their hands, which is that they're confronting Microsoft head-on with their media player technology. So I'm quite sure that they're concentrating all their efforts on making their Windows 7 as good as it can be, at the expense of their Windows 3.1 customers and other things. So I know of no plans to move the G2 technology onto OS2.
We've got a kind of a line of people waiting for questions.
If you want to approach this afterwards, that's fine.
Okay, I'll try and make this question as intelligible as possible. Okay, so you already said that it states on the webpage that there's going to be a new browser next year. You haven't said what it is, but this question, I guess, is sort of related to that. There is a small group of independent developers in the OS2 community who are working on porting the NPL released Mozilla code to OS2. At one time, there were some Netscape developers unofficially involved in that. Is your group monitoring any of that at all? And there's a new rendering engine, Gecko, that's involved in it. And is any of that going to find its way into a new release?
I'll try to make the answer as unintelligible as possible. Say that we have actually investigated what it would take to have the Mozilla on OS2, but haven't put any direct effort into doing that ourselves.
But if you follow the news groups, you'll see that we are investigating it. We're actively asking questions and involved. So you can just keep watching this space. That's all I can say about that. But in particular, that guy's involved in the project. If you go to the OS2 news group, you'll see that I put up a couple of posts there. So anything you can glean from the things that I posted is the information that you get. Because that's all I'm allowed to do is post.
My question, two questions actually. First, the drag and drop in 202 versus the various incarnations of 404 and 461 are incompatible. Why is that? And are you going to try to reconcile that at some point? Like you you can't drag a link from a 202 window into a 461.
You actually should be able to do that. If that doesn't work, that would just flat out be a bug.
If there's a big no.
Because that should be dragging a URL object. The short answer is, there's a lot of drag and drop within the Netscape browser itself. And unfortunately, OS2's drag drop requires you to lock the PS when you do a drag. Now, all you can say, wait a minute, in a new version of OS2, there's the ability to drag without locking the PS. Well, we know that, but it's in a much later version of OS2 than we were allowed to pre-rec at the time. But like Netscape pops up menus when you drag, and they scroll windows when you drag, so we had to make a decision as to what we were going to do. And we did a lot of upfront work, and we decided that we needed the Netscape drag to work because a big complaint in 202 was like you couldn't drag and scroll the bookmark window. So we opted to invent our own drag. Essentially what we're doing is literally, changing the mouse pointer, capturing the mouse. Now what we did for 461 is we put as much of that function back as we could. We put back drag and drop on the end. We put back, dragging the subfolders there. The only thing that's missing right now, I think, is control dragging of HTML. And also the fact that when you drag to the desktop, it doesn't keep the location. That's going to be fixed in the service refresh. Dragging to details view is fixed with the service refresh. And the control drag of HTML is fixed in the service refresh. But that specific problem I would have to take as a bug and go back and look at. But you should be able to do that simply because when you drag to Netscape, we act like it's a real OS2 drag. So that should work. Now you'll never be able to drag with EMView or any other OS2 application because it's not a real drag. Now as far as future plans for that kind of thing, people are going to have you in their scrapbook, Jeff. Are you excited?
I was more laughing because you're talking about how it's a real drag.
So in terms of future things, we have to look at the drag technology that Netscape does and how they implement how drag drops done in the future and see if that can better integrate with with our platform. But right now, that was a conscious decision we made in order to enable drag drop in the entire browser, and we've got, like I said, we've got some fixes for a lot of the other problems you guys were seeing coming down the pipe. But any other problems that you see related to that, we'd be interested in knowing about. Now, that's going to lead to a question, which I'm just going to have to, because I'm waiting for somebody to ask this one, because everybody's been bugging in the district.
Well, wait, before you do that, I just wanted to kind of give the short answer for what you just all went through. The short answer is, dragging from 461, we're doing direct manipulation and direct communication with the shell desktop. So it's only going to work in that direction. Dragging to Netscape, any direction.
Okay, and the other obvious question that will come up is, oh, well, then how do I tell you that that's a bug? And I've been working very hard to try to get a support mechanism in place for Netscape, but I'm being very unsuccessful. So what I've been told is that the proper channel for reporting bugs in Netscape is the same channel that you use to report bugs in OS2. This is the part where everybody says, I don't have a channel to report bugs in OS2. Okay, you're correct. With the software choice thing, you'll get one soon. But anyway, so we're continuing to monitor the news groups as best we can, and when we see problems, we're turning them in to service to let them know. But I'm still pushing on service that even if nobody read the email ever, wouldn't it at least make you feel good to have sent the bug in? I mean, even if it was an email address that you threw away every note that came to it, at least you get the feeling that you did something, It's kind of like when you recycle. You put it in the recycling thing. You don't know if the trash guy throws it away on the other end, but I put it in. I did my part. So that's kind of the situation where, I won't tell you if that's actually what happens with the notes, but we're still... we're still investigating whether or not that's going to happen. So, hey, how are we doing? What time is it?
Last question. One more.
We've got two guys playing. Can you take the two guys in the line?
I have my
All right.
real quick second question. When you view source,
Yeah.
it re-gets from the server. This is especially crappy when you're using CGI and then it says, oh, you get your source back and it says, missing data from a post on Reddit. And there's no way to repost where you're viewing.
Probably the same thing on Windows. That's probably just a bug. Again, let's just put it up and we'll see if there's anything to be done on it. Okay, last question. Quick.
It's not a question.
Oh.
I just wanted to say one thing. I know it's your job. I know you guys are paid to do this, but I hope you'll take back to the team that at least one guy in the OS2 community thinks you've done a hell of a piece of work.
Thanks, guys. We'll be around the conference today and tomorrow if you guys have any more questions. So, thanks for your
We got lots of stuff. So don't go anywhere. Now remember, today is part one of the raffle. There's another part tomorrow night. And we're saving all the good, no, half the good stuff tomorrow night. So you gotta stick around. Is everyone enjoying themselves is number one? Yeah! If there are any problems or any situations or issues that we do need to know about, find one of the guys in the red shirt and let us know, because we want to hear about it. There's surveys. Thank you for reminding me. There are also Warpstock evaluations for the overall Warpstock as well as for suggestions. They're out in the registration area, so please pick one up and fill it in and turn it back in when you get a chance. I can't give you anything for filling it out other than a thank you, and we will take your feedback.